It is a serious problem, the likes of which we have never had.
The 10-year-old boy suddenly died last month after going swimming, and now his death has been linked to the lethal drug fentanyl.
It also introduces a whole set of risks to law enforcement.
This Friday marks 1 year since the music legend's body was found in an elevator inside his Paisley Park complex. It would later be revealed that he died of an accidental fentanyl overdose.
Law enforcement and first responders that are responding to overdose deaths that are at risk.
Because we've already established that fentanyl and carfentanil, which are extremely potent, and particularly carfentanil, 1 dose or 2 doses or 3 doses, etc., of Narcan may not be enough.
We have a real epidemic in this country of overdosing from drugs. Under that umbrella of overdosing in all drugs, you have the opioid crisis, and within the opioid crisis, you have oxycodone and codeine and all of those opioids. Then you have fentanyl, which is a unique one because it's pretty cheap, it's readily accessible, and it is hundreds of times stronger than most of the narcotics.
A fast-acting synthetic opioid, fentanyl was developed in 1960 and brought to market as an anesthetic named Sublamaze. It proved extremely useful, and fentanyl's status as a go-to medication continues to this day.
Oh, it's extremely effective. But initially, in the trauma room, in the emergency department, up in the ICU, after an operation or during an operation, fentanyl is our #1 drug to use.
An opioid is a substance that binds to the opioid receptors in your body, primarily providing pain relief. The opioid morphine, derived from the opium poppy, was first isolated in 1805. Common opioids include codeine, hydrocodone, oxycodone, methadone, and fentanyl.
It's a synthetic opioid, meaning it's manufactured. It's not from nature like heroin is from a poppy. It is synthesized in the lab so that we have the availability of a medication to use that is both safe and effective, pure and regulated.
It's unfortunate that in the history of law enforcement and all first response and EMS is that, every decade or so we go through these new drugs that come out there, whether it's LSD, PCP, street drugs that are out there that people use, prescription drugs that make it to the street and get sold, oxycodone, OxyContin, Tylenol and codeine, all of those type of things. And now there's a relatively new one out there, fentanyl. Now in the medical profession, fentanyl's been there a long time, but it's becoming more and more a drug of abuse.
So historically, we have heroin. Heroin comes from a poppy. That poppy has to be harvested and manufactured into heroin. It's quite a lengthy process. With this fentanyl, they can sell it as heroin, but in reality, it takes them maybe 1 day to manufacture fentanyl. So it's a lot easier, it's more cost effective for them, and they can charge a lot more.
So the forms of fentanyl that we use, there is the intravenous that we use most commonly. There is a patch. We also have lollipops. The military is very quick to use those, and we use them for kids as well. There's also a crystalline form. That's usually the side of the house that's called illegal.
Fentanyl is 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more than heroin.
One of the things that people have to remember is any of the opioids, it doesn't matter if it's morphine, heroin, fentanyl, any opioid depresses your respiratory system, your ability to breathe. That's what kills people. It doesn't stop your heart all the time. Now, in a massive overdose, it can affect your heart, but it affects your ability to breathe, and that's what kills people. We use it in doses of generally anywhere from 25, 50, or 100 micrograms. Remember, 1 milligram is 1,000 micrograms. You come in contact with a milligram as what we call an opiate naive person, that's enough to overdose you big time. Because if you give that much to somebody, they're going to stop breathing.
It's November of 2016 in San Diego, California.
We were up on a long-term investigation monitoring some cell phones of a methamphetamine and cocaine distributor. We received information that a load was going to be leaving a particular residence, so we followed it away. We had the San Diego Sheriff's Department conduct a stop on the vehicle. Inside of the vehicle, they found 15 kilograms of what was suspected cocaine at the time.
A search warrant executed at a house associated with the vehicle stop yielded an additional 60 pounds, over 90 pounds total. The problem was, that it wasn't cocaine.
The issue with this particular seizure is that we don't even think that the crooks knew that it was fentanyl. They were cocaine and methamphetamine dealers. And this is what concerns DEA and should concern all law enforcement across the board, is that this stuff is coming across and could be sold as fentanyl, could be sold as cocaine. You could sell it as oxycodone, hydrocodone, and we have pill seekers going out thinking that they're possibly buying Xanax. They are not opioid users. They're seeking pills on the street, but they are not looking for an opioid. And we have made Xanax seizures that contain fentanyl.
A critical change in mindset among law enforcement and first responders is essential in avoiding possible exposure.
We can't just start cutting into bags because we think we purchase methamphetamine and we think we purchase heroin. We have to now be cognizant of the fact that even though it may contain heroin, meth, or cocaine, it could also contain fentanyl.
Treat everything as it can be toxic. Make sure you have gloves on. Whether it's bales of marijuana, whether it is chemicals that are in cans that people are cooking something that you don't know, it's not important that you identify it then. You know, the cavalry will come and somebody will identify that. Most important thing you do is make the scene safe, keep people away from it, and let experts come and make the identification specifically.
Recognizing the signs of opioid overdose is critical.
Recognition is certainly one of the key factors. It doesn't matter which opioid. The problem is, again, that potency, which is how fast those bad side effects are going to happen. Respiratory depression, cold and clammy, the eyes go pinpoint, the pupils go pinpoint, which is a reaction to the opioid. But the thing that you really got to watch for, change in mental status, lethargy, weakness, slowed heart rate, slowed or very impaired ability to breathe. It's almost like somebody was giving you a paralytic, a drug that will chemically paralyze you, which means all of your body systems muscularly will no longer work. If all of a sudden they start to get a little woozy, tired, lethargic, breathing slowing down, heart rate slowing down, check their eyes real quick, that's a very good window into what's going on. If they have pinpoint pupils, the first thing you better think about is a potential exposure to one of these drugs.
Your instinct is going to be to help your buddy if your buddy looks sick, your partner, whoever that is, okay? And that's fine to do. The question is, why are they feeling sick? Why did they pass out? Is there something in the room? It may not be fentanyl. So treat everything as potentially hazardous. But if one of your partners goes down, get them out of there as quickly as you can. Obviously, do the safety thing, make sure it's secure, make sure there's nobody else in the area that's going to harm you or your partner, but move him or her to a safe area and assess them. Airway, breathing, circulation. Any questions at all, and if there's a suspicion that it could be from a narcotic somehow inadvertently intoxicating them and causing them to slow their breathing down and maybe putting them in jeopardy, you hit them with Narcan right away.
The problem with fentanyl is it's so potent, it takes much more of the antidote, meaning the Narcan, to counteract the effects.
And this is something that we're going to have to deal with as law enforcement. So we can't just say, well, if you decide to use heroin or fentanyl, buyer beware. We have to concern ourselves with the safety of first responders, law enforcement, fire departments, because these people are going to come into contact with these drugs.
Just because there's a bunch of chemicals on the table, you don't need to touch them. If they're germane to the investigation, leave it alone. Get experts to come in. If in doubt, handle everything with gloves, personal protective equipment, and don't expose yourself to any hazardous materials that's not necessary to keep a scene safe or to save a life.